interesting example of something that might actually be serving a good purpose by having been preserved away from the multiple copies that happened with the other Gospels, was the Gospel of Thomas. It was probably copied no more than once or twice, and it was collected from verbal traditions. The manuscripts that have been found are very similar, and that's how they were able to verify that certain parts were, the Gospel of Thomas. What was interesting about it was that for 2,000 years, basically, it had lain dormant. About 50 years ago, it was found by an Egyptian and sold piecemeal to collectors. But luckily, an archaeologist found out what was happening and managed to scarf up as many pieces as he could, and the missing pieces were able to be reinserted from the other documents that had been found in the past that were much more sketchy. This one was called the Gospel of Thomas, and its sayings were mind-blowing. When I read them for the very first time, one of the things that struck me is if he had arrived as a modern person and said these things, we would have understood a great many of them. There were references to many scientific things that have happened, but only in the last 100 or so years. Before that, there was no way of understanding anything he said. As a result, I think that the Trinitarian branch of Christianity has cubbyholed the Gospel of Thomas into something called a cryptic manuscript. It's not understandable. It's from a secret society, blah, blah, blah. The problem with that is that that delegates it to, well, if we can't understand it, nobody can. Well, maybe they should have just disseminated it to all the people of the world instead of putting it on their musty old desks and trying to analyze it. Sometimes you can ruin a pearl by analyzing it. Why don't you just look at it? When I looked at it, I have a very strange and unique background. I have been in so many different jobs, it's ridiculous. But as a result of meeting many different kinds of people and my diverse background, and having friends from various careers and ways of thinking, when I read these, every single one of them made sense to me. And there were echoes in the things that I had learned as a child. One of them was, there's only one God, not three of them. Another one was that women were equal. And even though Paul tried to establish that, somehow it sort of got swept under the rug at some point, and now Christianity is still fighting its way back from a misogynist point of view. The Church of Thomas has never been anti-female and has embraced it as one of the gifts that God gave people. Well, as a result, the Gospel of Thomas was an answer to my prayer. I had had a friend when I was younger, in high school, and he was gay. And I tried to explain to him that in the Church of Thomas, a gospel represented the way God felt about gay people. And I tried to reassure him that he was not going to hell. He was not a bad person. But because of what he was being taught by his parents, his minister, he was basically told that unless he cut off every part of his emotions that were natural and normal to him, he was going to die and burn in hell. It's ironic that the people who were supposed to do as Jesus did treated this young man with such disrespect. He killed himself. And because he killed himself, it wounded me. It made me want to help people who were struggling with this issue, who did not seem to be getting the support they needed from their spiritual communities. And because they weren't getting the support they needed from their spiritual communities, I wanted to share what I knew. But unfortunately, one of the things that many people have is that if it's not written down, it can't be true. I mean, how many people read, something in the paper and they go, oh, well, it's in the newspaper, it must be true. And then they have a retraction 2 weeks later in small print, bottom of the first page or the 15th page, saying, oh, oops, I said this name wrong, or this didn't happen in this city, it happened in that city. Well, these corrections never seem to get noticed. It's only the headlines. Well, the headlines that had been promoted for so long were, it's not written, can't be true. Well, that sort of leaves an oral tradition out of the running for being in the truth game. So I had hoped someday to find writings that were attributed to our apostle. And God finally told me what you're looking for is within your reach.